Hey, what's going on, guys? We're going to give it a few minutes and then we'll go ahead and get started. What's going on, Luis? Good to have you here. Gonna give it a few minutes and we'll let everyone get in here and then we'll go get started. What's going on, TJ? Good to have you here. Nice to see the market pumping. We were talking about how it was bullish on the weekly time frame, so good to see at least that continuing. What's going on, Snifted? Good to see you here. Unfortunately for hedged positions, it did not turn out as well. Technically, we're still watching that, but again, you always have to look at both sides whenever you're betting on these trending markets. And so that's something we'll be continuing to watch as well. Tim, what's going on? Shahid, hello, sir. How are you? My question is BTC will pump and dump. Yes. So BTC potentially has one more pump in it to 97 to 98K. I know a few people shorting near those levels. And so I think that would be the next area of interest. If we get there, that would coincide with the 50 weekly EMA. So just keep an eye on that. But for now, just being patient, especially with shorts and longs, really. When you have everything overextended like this, it's always good to be patient versus forcing trades. Sparacos, what's going on? Good to see you here. Cool, guys. So this stream will be on top crypto narratives to watch this year. Now, 2026 is already turning up to be a great year. Everything's pumping, and really any dip is getting bought up. So I think that's a testament to where the institutions want us to go. And we also saw Michael Saylor buying Bitcoin, creating a lot of hype in the market. Usually he marks local tops, so we'll have to see what happens with that. But the biggest thing is learning to navigate this market accordingly and being able to properly predict what narratives are going to spur up, because as Luke always says, where attention goes, money flows. And so watching that very, very shortly. Amarin says, might see Bitcoin at 133K soon. Hey, nothing's out of the realm of possibility. Tazuli, good to have you here. Snifted, I've opened a short right now. I hope it goes down so I can reverse before the bigger pump. Yeah, so that's the thing with shorts right now, guys, is, I mean, shorts, all things considered, shorts should have worked out during this time. But when you have a shift from the bear market to a bull market, or at least a mini rally, then the market stays irrational longer than you can stay solvent. So even if you have overbought stochastic RSIs on the daily, if it's not a strong enough resistance, then the market's just going to continue to blow through that and cause a massive short squeeze to the upside, which we're seeing right now. So that's something I'm watching very closely, and I'll keep you guys apprised of that. Again, 97 to 98K is the big resistance level to watch out for, and I will be watching that very, very closely. With that said, let's go ahead and start the live stream. So why narratives matter? Well, crypto moves on liquidity and narratives. So again, where attention goes, money flows. And so the big thing with this is, one, focusing on what narratives are prevalent. Now, something else that I want to mention is narratives aren't just something like AI, privacy, etc., right? Narratives can be something such as Bitcoin dominance is topping out and altcoins are about to send. Okay, so that's a narrative, right? Or a narrative could be something even as, small as, okay, there's ETF flows coming back, so institutions are coming back, so now we're about to go on a crazy bull run again because attention is back in the market. There's different narratives you can say, so this is going to be more so of a generalized what narratives to focus on live stream, but we're still going to focus on the main ones and the main sectors, but at the same time, we're going to focus on different aspects of narratives and how I look at them. And if you guys even check my post on X just the other day, I said the market is looking extremely bullish right now. And so if you guys haven't checked that out, then I highly, highly recommend it. And I will go ahead and actually link my X account in the comments so you guys can see. This is CryptoData, by the way, who's speaking, so you guys know. But check that out, and actually posted January 4th. I'm seeing a ton of bullish signals in the market. So if you just look at the narratives and can look at where the market is going, then it helps you to even continue to predict accurately these various narratives. So attention is going to precede that revenue, meaning you're going to see attention focus on these narratives before it actually happens. So you'll start to see these indicators start to turn to the upside, start to see everything turn bullish, and then you see that revenue really start to hammer home and really basically solidify that narrative. So a narrative framework, one, you have to have a catalyst, okay? So think of it this way. Whenever ChatGPT came out, I believe it was November 2022, what catalyst was that for? Well, it was a catalyst for AI, right? The new era of AI, productivity, efficiency, etc. And so when you had that catalyst of OpenAI launching, of ChatGPT launching, then you had all these AI tokens pumping. And literally they were pumping 50, 100% every other day. And so you had that liquidity path and that reflexivity where people said, hey, this is a huge narrative and there's a lot of attention, like we just talked about. And so now you have this AI narrative that's playing out for the next week or two. And so that's an easy way to identify narratives, is what is the catalyst for this narrative? And again, it can even be something as simple as a meme that's focused on Trump capturing Maduro, right? And you can see there's memes about Maduro, memes about his clothes, memes about Trump in, sombrero. Like there's all kinds of memes. And so it doesn't have to be a huge narrative, but most narratives do have a catalyst because they need that attention. Now, let's go ahead and switch it a little bit. So Bitcoin institutionalization. Okay, this is another narrative. Another narrative meaning now institutions are getting involved, right? More so now than ever. And it's just the similar thing that we saw once ETFs entered the space. And so last cycle, 2021, we didn't have ETFs. This cycle, we did. And so what does that mean? It means that supply is getting absorbed by ETFs. That means things are a little bit different this time around. And so now that you have Bitcoin institutionalized, that is a new narrative in and of itself, and that Bitcoin is now acting more or less like a TradFi asset, traditional finance, i.e. stock market, i.e., et cetera. So now when you have that, okay, what does that mean as well? Well, it means that there's gonna be a lot of liquidity coming to Bitcoin. We're already seeing that right now. We're seeing how resilient it's been ahead of, or I should say after the war, or after the US bombed Venezuela. Bitcoin didn't really dump that much, not as much as you would expect. And so now what you're seeing is this shift that people have from Bitcoin more or less being one-to-one or acting in parallel with the TradFi space to now acting as its own asset, acting as a flight to safety asset, as a hedge, right? Something that we've been saying all along for the past 7 to 8 years. Now it's finally coming to fruition that people are flocking to Bitcoin when wars break out. So you have ETFs, you have the macro asset, and you have dominance cycles. Now, Bitcoin dominance is another one that we'll talk about soon. So for Bitcoin positioning, okay, I mentioned you watch dominance. So Bitcoin dominance is the total market cap of Bitcoin divided by the total market cap of crypto. So now, with that said, what does that mean? Well, it means that is Bitcoin going to dominate the narrative, or is the narrative going to shift to altcoins? Because right now, Bitcoin is obviously rising, but we're still starting to see a few utility plays gain some traction. And so with that said, Bitcoin right now, I believe it's near 59%. If we break below that percentage of dominance, then alts are going to send. And there's also other factors at play, the total 2, total 3, the market cap minus Ethereum or Bitcoin or minus the top 10 alts. And so that's another narrative you can look at. So you watch dominance, you watch ETF flows, or institutions investing, and then you watch the macro correlation, just like we mentioned earlier. When the US bombed Venezuela, how did Bitcoin react? Did it fall? Did it pump? Did it only drop a little bit? Did it drop a lot? Did it pump a lot, right? There's all these correlation factors that you have to keep in mind. So the fact that Bitcoin did not drop that much when the US bombed Venezuela before they captured Maduro tells you, and it signals to everyone, or it should signal that, hey, this new narrative is forming that Bitcoin is actually digital gold and a flight to safety asset. It's a safe haven, more so. That's the narrative. It's a safe haven. So now when you have that narrative that's formed, okay, any dips on Bitcoin, I'm buying now, right? We could still drop. And that's still why I kept the short open for higher, because I was thinking, okay, still a possibility we reject here, even if it's just a little bit. But clearly that strength was shown that, hey, people want this to go higher. And so that's something you guys have to watch out for, is when you see these correlations and you notice these relationships happening, then you can't ignore them. And also you have Ethereum infrastructure. So settlement layer, yield, tokenization. So Ethereum had its Fusaka upgrade, I believe December 3rd or December 4th. And with that, there's been a lot of developments on it. Now, Also, you have yield. And so think of restaking. Think of things like Athena, where you get yield for basically for stable coins, which is another narrative we'll talk about. But there's all these kinds of different dApps and these other platforms that are being built on top of Ethereum, even L2s. And so you have tokenization as well, real world assets, which we'll talk about. And so with Ethereum's infrastructure, you have its whole narrative in and of itself. Now, with ETH positioning, you have to look at ETH BTC, the trend. And so is ETH outperforming Bitcoin? And then the L2 growth as well. So what's the TVL like, total value locked? Are those gaining some traction? Because usually when ETH pumps, then it creates this narrative that alts are going to pump. And then you have to look at beta plays like L2s on Ethereum, base chain, optimism, Arbitrum, etc. But you also look at other things such as memes on Ethereum, Pepe, SHIB, Floki, Ethereum Classic, Athena, right? Beta plays that usually pump after Ethereum pumps. So that's another thing to watch out for. And then you have AI and crypto. So these are the sector narratives we'll get into real quick. And then we'll kind of close it out with a few other things I'm watching in the market right now. So AI and crypto is a big one. And you have agents, compute, and data markets. Now, AI is just going to get more prevalent. And I'm curious how many people here use Claude or have heard of Claude Code or Claude Opus 4.5. Has anyone here heard of Claude? Because I've seen that being talked about more and more over the past week. Frank has talked about it. Thread Guy has talked about it. And more people are using that to code. Jovian says yes. Angelo says no. Okay, so Tim has heard about it. Tazuli's heard about it. Yeah, so think of Claude more or less like ChatGPT, except focused on coding. Like it's a much better coder than ChatGPT, than Grok, than Gemini. Like people have used Claude Code right now and are really just creating apps in a day, creating indicators in a day. Like they're creating things that would normally take them weeks, if not months, to create. And so it's a new era of productivity and of efficiency. And when you have even Elon saying we've entered the singularity for 2026, which basically means that we've reached escape velocity with the development of AI, and things are increasing, or things are developing quicker than humans can actually plan for. It's no longer linear, it's parabolic right now. So Chris says, I use Claude every day. Jovian, coding LLM. Yeah, coding, large language model. Jovian, yes, it's by Anthropic. They are the company. So OpenAI is the company of ChatGPT. Anthropic is the company by Claude. 100%. I recommend everyone here try Claude. Claude. Especially Claude Code. If you're into coding, it's going to make your life 100 times easier. And right now, the productivity window for using Claude or these other AI platforms to leapfrog the competition is still there, but the window is closing very quickly. I can guarantee you guys in 2 years, having Claude as a coder for you is no longer going to be an edge. Like we're still at the adoption phase where people are finding out about it and finding out what they can use it for. But it's going to become so mainstream that it's just going to be like riding a bike, or it's just going to be like using the computer. Like everyone's going to do it, and it's just going to be nothing special. And then so that's the thing, guys, is you need to take advantage of these AI programs as soon as they come out and utilize them as much as possible, because the opportunity is so high right now and you can make a lot of money with them. But nonetheless, this is going to cause a lot of hype for AI again. I think there's going to be more things developed with this, and we're going to continue to see some good AI projects come out of that. Now, also we have quantum. So quantum is a threat to Bitcoin. It's a real threat over the next few years. You have IBM supercomputer coming out 2029. Obviously, Google is really focused on quantum and a few other companies, but quantum is a big threat for cracking the SHA-256 algorithm for Bitcoin. So they're focused on, one, making quantum resistant crypto, quote unquote, which is why I put this as a narrative, because if you can find a protocol that's focused on quantum resistance and it's legitimate, then it could do well in the future. Now, also, if you have Bitcoin focusing on quantum resistance, or maybe, depending how they're going to fix that issue, that's also something that could garner some attention towards that. And then, like I said, where attention goes, money flows. And so that's something I'm watching very closely as well. And also in the stock space, and this quantum and robotics, I should say, stocks are going to definitely focus on this in the future. And I think we're going to see a lot of quantum stocks and even robotics with, Tesla, Amazon, they're already focused on robotics, but there's going to be other companies as well. And so the narrative is just going to continue to become more prevalent. But yeah, and there's already rumors that China's already cracked the quantum code, and that's why we saw a lot of dormant Bitcoin wallets selling their Bitcoin. Who knows if that's the case, right? But nonetheless, it is a real threat. Chris says, as facts about Claude, I'm working in 3 side projects only because tasks that took me months now takes me hours or a few days. That's amazing, Chris. And that's awesome that, again, we're seeing AI help to make people more productive by a magnitude of, again, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10x. It's insane. But it's true, and the world is changing, and so you have to change with it or get left behind. So the AI trade approach, well, it's narrative driven, obviously, but it's volatile, okay? Whenever we had AI tokens pumping when ChatGPT came out, yes, they were pumping a lot, 50, 100% plus every couple of days, but at the same time, they were dropping even quicker because the narratives shift, attention shifts. So how do you trade when these narratives come about? Well, 1, you don't marry your bags, but 2, you size in smaller, try to catch those quick gains, and then you get out. Okay, the biggest thing is getting out, right? You have to take profits along the way anytime you're narrative trading. Like that should go for literally almost every time you're trading, take profits along the way. So that is something to keep in mind for AI. Now, I talked about other ones, real world assets. So BlackRock mentioned tokenization of assets, RWAs, in 2023, and that's now only getting more prevalent. So you have tokenized treasuries, credit, equities, things that are tokenized on the blockchain. You can buy cars, houses, jewelry, watches, etc. And so 2026 will be the year of RWAs because now we're getting into mainstream adoption. Now we're getting to where institutions and banks are really focused on adopting Bitcoin, creating their own stablecoin, creating their own infrastructure on the blockchain. And so it's only a matter of time before everyone in the world now is tokenized on the blockchain, right? Because it just makes things easier. It's more secure, it's transparent, censorship resistant, safer, faster, right? Like what more do you need? And so that's why I think real world assets could have a big play this year. Now, the risks are going to be adoption speed because these have been slow to come to market. Yes, there's been a few, but still, for RWAs, you need to have licenses to be able to sell real world assets on the blockchain. There's actual rules in place for this. That's why we haven't seen a flurry of big RWA projects. There's been a few, right? Syrup has been one. There's been a few others. I believe it was, I'm trying to think, IXS. So IX Swap was one. You even had C-Pool. That was another one. I think that was focused on credit. You have these RWA projects that are legitimate, but again, you need to have licenses, so they take a little while. And then centralization is a risk, but honestly, guys, centralization at this point is just, it's unavoidable in crypto. I hate to say it, but I think decentralized or decentralization is a meme now in crypto. Yes, you still have it with privacy, and I will talk about that in a minute, but you have to be okay with centralization at this point because now you have regulators who are involved. They want clarity, they want transparency, and so you just have to play the game, right? And I know the EU actually cracked down on taxes with crypto and tracking down people to pay their taxes. And so, again, just bite the bullet, start paying your taxes if you're not, and just get everything right because the world is shifting. While they are adopting crypto, they're also making it more centralized. And so just the sooner you can jump on that bandwagon, jump on that train, the sooner you can take advantage of it and find out how to utilize it towards your advantage. Now, stablecoins, another narrative. Okay, JP Morgan's creating their own stablecoin, banks creating their own stablecoin, countries looking to create their own stablecoin. Like stablecoins are a huge narrative. Now, what protocol is focused on stablecoins? Well, you have Ethena, it's focused on paying out APY with stablecoins, with USDC. And so stablecoins will only continue to become more prevalent, not only just from a use case perspective for the digital dollar, but also in APY perspective for staking your stablecoins, providing liquidity for stablecoins. And so that's something that's only going to grow. And so I think stablecoins, any protocol dealing with stablecoins, with APY, with anything like that, it's going to be big. That's why Athena, I think, is starting to finally gain some legs again. Now, also you have layer 2 wars. So the biggest thing with layer 2 wars is when you have the main token pumping like Ethereum, then you say, okay, what are some beta plays? Well, usually after Ethereum pumps, you have the layer 2s pump. Now, layer twos, such as, the base chain, when you have layer two memes pumping on base, because here's what happens is you have Ethereum pumping, and then, okay, what's used for gas on these layer twos, right? If it's Ethereum, well, it's an easy transfer over there. And you can also trade on those chains. And so you just have to see, okay, what layer twos are gaining attention, are having more transactions, gaining more TVL, etc., are actually developing. And then that's where the attention is going to go. And then obviously you can go down the ladder of other betas like Ethereum Classic, Athena, memes on Ethereum, etc. So that's where you have layer two wars and seeing which one comes out on top, which one has the most attention. Now, prediction markets are another narrative that I'm watching. So I'm sure everyone here is sort of Kalshi or Polymarket. They took the world by storm the latter half of last year, and they're continuing to do so. Literally, it's insider trading legalized. I mean, let's just be real about it. And so we're seeing these betting platforms really just betting on anything and everything in the world. And so with that said, you have to think that, well, any protocol that creates their own betting platform with their own token is going to do well. And so that's why I say prediction markets are going to become a big narrative if they aren't already. Because when you have protocols creating their own token, then that's going to create a lot of attention, even if it's only for a short while. Because obviously Kalshi and Polymarket are the main movers, but imagine when they have their token, how high that's going to go, right? And so prediction markets are here to stay. It's only going to get more prevalent. Now, also revenue generating protocols. So think Hyperliquid. They make money off liquidations. Then they buy back the token. Lighter, similar thing. They buy back, the Lighter is actually buying back their token right now as we speak. So price is doing fairly well. Arguably, they have better tech than Hyperliquid. So you have these protocols that are revenue generating, even Pump, right? Pump generates revenue. And so now we're seeing these actual utility plays that are generating revenue. And you can even say they have similar to stocks with their balance sheet, right? And so from that point, then it becomes actual utility in that case. And okay, these flywheels start taking effect where they buy back the token with their revenue, and then it just continues. And so look for these protocols that are actually revenue generating, and those will be the ones that actually help down the line and actually appreciate in price. Now, next, privacy tokens. So another narrative I'm watching. Now, I mentioned earlier that we're not really decentralized anymore besides privacy. And so utility matters when talking about privacy. I mean, it has to be a legitimate platform. It has to be easy to use. It has to be adaptable, both, right? And so when we saw Zcash and XMR pumping last year, these were outperforming. Like these started pumping out of nowhere. Dino coins, people said it was the end of the cycle when they started pumping. Could it be? It's possible. It's possible. We're in a bear market right now, but I don't think so necessarily. I think that we'll still appreciate higher, but obviously we're gonna have volatility. But nonetheless, Zcash and XMR did very well because there's so much focus now on transparency, on regulation. So people still want that privacy narrative. Now, Umbra is another one that's very interesting. They have a lot of partnerships in the background. They're doing very well. So I do think Umbra will catch on even more. But the biggest thing here is just privacy is going to continue to be a big narrative in 2026, especially as more people crack down on transparency and regulation. So keep an eye on privacy tokens. And then meme coins, last but not least. Now, meme coins are liquidity vehicles. They're focused on retail attention. So I mentioned anything can be a meme coin nowadays. Even when Nick Shirley, blew off the lid of the Minnesota fraud that was going on, there was a meme coin named Nick Shirley, and that went up to over 4 mil. And so you have other tokens like White Whale, Flying Ketamine Horse, 6-7. Like you have all these other memes that are just popping up left and right. And so looking at TikTok is going to be an advantage, and also just being quick whenever there's a big macro event that happens. And there's that catalyst, there's that narrative, that attention that is focused on that catalyst. And so memes will always be here, but the way they move is very attention based, more so than other sectors. And so you have to be quick with memes, and like with anything, you have to take profits along the way. And then I see some questions as well, so I'll get to those towards the end here. Now, risk management. This is a big one, guys, because as you trade narratives, you have to take profits, but not marry your bags. And why I say this is because narratives shift so much. One day, privacy could be the biggest narrative, and then the next day, it could be AI. Then the next day, it could be RWA. Then the next day, it could be L2s, right? Like, there's always shifting narratives, and so you can never marry your bags, but at the same time, if it's a narrative that you can see has staying power, and let's say whatever event is happening, you expect that event to continue, then yes, you can hold your bags for a little bit longer. But again, take your profits, set your stops at break even, so you lock in your profits. That's the biggest thing. And so make sure you guys are focused on proper risk management at all times, guys. And this is even if the narrative that, hey, we're in an alt season right now, like even if that narrative forms, you still need to hedge your positions, still need to either A, be looking for shorts as well, or B, just waiting for price to come back down, not FOMO in. Like again, risk management is key. And so let's talk about the standard narrative rotation versus just sectors. Let's talk about overall. Usually it's Bitcoin, ETH, alts, memes. This is a standard rotation. Now in 2023, October, we saw memes started. And then it kind of turned around from there, maybe alts a little bit. So it's almost reverse. And so usually it's just a combination of this. Now what we're seeing, we saw memes pump, right? You remember Pepe, SHIB, all those were pumping. Now we're starting to see a shift back into Bitcoin. So Bitcoin's pumping now above 94K. And so eventually we're going to see Ethereum catch on and then alts catch on again into utility. So this is accelerating this whole narrative rotation here. And so just know that, Bitcoin dominance, focus on that. When that's topping out, then that liquidity flows into ETH, which then subsequently falls into alts and then memes, right? Goes down the ladder. And so you have to be able to identify these and identify when that liquidity is flowing. And I would say it's not easy all the time, but usually it's pretty easy to spot whenever you see Bitcoin pumping a lot and nothing else is pumping, and then eventually you have ETH start to pump, like, okay, this is it. Now we're going to start going into alts and memes. So what we watch Bitcoin dominance, we watch ETH BTC, and we watch stablecoin supply. USDT dominance plus USDC dominance. That's stablecoin supply. So is USDT dominance declining? Well, if it's declining, that means people are getting out of stables and investing into alts or Bitcoin, and vice versa. Is ETH BTC rising? If it is, well, ETH is outperforming Bitcoin, and now we're going to see other alts outperform. Is Bitcoin dominance rising? That means that a lot of liquidity is going to Bitcoin, and alts and memes may be lagging, right? You need to be able to identify which one is prevalent, then that's going to help you determine if you're more risk on or risk off. So the key takeaway here is narratives drive returns, and that's all crypto is. Crypto is a game of attention. Where attention goes, money flows. It's based off of hype. It's based off of who has the most marketing, who has the most backers, what is the most contagious isn't the right word, but again, what's the most attractive in terms of a narrative that is getting the most clicks or that drives the strongest argument for why that should be the overarching narrative. And so you have to be able to look at all the different factors, not only TA-wise, but fundamentals-wise as well. And that's going to help you stay ahead of those narratives and then get those returns before everyone else. So let's go ahead and look at a few questions here. So Angelo says, thoughts on XRP? XRP is doing great. It's very, very strong right now. I think it's a big possibility that we see XRP continue to outperform. I do know there's some support, I believe near 212, if I'm not mistaken from looking at it last time. But yeah, XRP is not doing too bad. We had, let's see, Tim says, I'm buying into Chevron as it's the only U.S. oil company in Venezuela. There you go. Not a bad bet there. Kai John, what's going on? Good to have you here. Marco says, hi, CD. I'm going to long in Bitcoin since 89K. Do you think I should hold till 96 or just close it? I've set it to break even. So Marco, what I would do for you, I would take 50% profit right now. And then I would take the other 50% at about, I would say 97K, maybe 96.5K. Yeah, around there. Because there's a lot of resistance at 97 to 98K right now, which is the 50 weekly EMA. So I would just be careful with that. But yeah, I would say at least take some profits right here around 94. Because there is some resistance around 94, around 93.5 to 94. And so I don't think it's a bad idea, especially with how euphoric people have been and the fact that Michael Saylor bought Bitcoin. Usually he marks local top. So yeah, risk management wise, I'll take some right now. Great trade, by the way. See, Super Luke says, do you think we'll hit the CME gaps? It's going to be that's the $1 million question, because there's a CME gap on Bitcoin at 88.2K for those who don't know. And they usually get filled, but the big question is going to be are they going to get filled within the next few weeks, which usually happens, or is it going to be the next few months if this run really is a sustained bull run? Because I am very bullish for Q1, but at the same time, I'm not oblivious to the fact that most indicators are overbought on the daily, and we are due for a pullback, and everyone's euphoric, right? But I'm telling you guys right now, the hardest thing to master in crypto is when you have the shift from a bear trend shifting to a bull trend. Like when you have that downtrend shift to an uptrend. That is the hardest thing to time, because when you shift to that uptrend, people are still having PTSD, for lack of a better word, from when we were in a downtrend, from Q4 of last year. So they're in that short mode. So they're continuing to short every single pump, which sends us higher because of a short squeeze. And so it's harder to time these tops of when we're going to reject. And so you have to look at the weekly levels, the monthly levels, the more significant resistance points, right? Because no longer is it the daily stock RSI is overbought, so we're going to pull back now. It was like that whenever we were chopping around. It's not like that now. Now the daily can be overbought for days on end, weeks on end, right? That's what happens in a strong uptrend. And so now you need to change the way you approach the market. And so that's why I told Marco that, hey, take some profits now. We've been in this uptrend since 87K. Potentially everyone's euphoric. There's a lot of flows coming in. Yes, we could still go higher. That's why you're not taking all profits. But at the same time, you still got to manage it a little bit when you start feeling a little euphoric, start taking screenshots, start seeing everyone posting P&Ls, right? Because that does happen. I mean, that's what happened in 2021. It was up only for a while. But at the same time, you still have to be able to look at both sides and still manage risk accordingly. Angelo says, facts, correlation does not mean causation based on the 4-year cycle. Exactly. Shahid, I long BTC 89K. Should I close here or trail? If you want to trail, you can. Trail or take half now and then half around 98K, 97, 98K. Aculite says, still thinking of shorting ETH at 35 to 36. Yeah, I think that'd still be a good level to short ETH. I mean, that's major resistance near that point. There's some big confluence levels there, so it would be a good area in my opinion. Let's see. Jovian says, how do you operate with speed and uncertainty? For example, Claude coding. So, Jovian, to answer your question, how do you operate with speed and uncertainty? So, for example, I think I'm trying to understand your question, but if you're asking how do you operate with, things moving fast and still, being uncertain at the same time, I mean, honestly, it's just you look for confluence, right? And so, yes, things move fast, but if you can find confluence, whether it's in your other groups, whether it's in the different social media platforms you're using, whether it's in, your research, you find a few things connected, correlated, technical wise, you're looking for patterns there. I mean, there's all kinds of ways you can look at, or you can help clear up uncertainty. And if you're mentioning Claude coding for that, that's just, if you're just coding with that, that's just going to be basically trying to fix your errors and then, guessing and checking at that point. But that's where you actually learn from others who have done it already. And so if you're trying to learn with Claude coding, look at all the posts on X about people using it. How are they using it? Look at the tutorials, look at the videos. That's the easiest way to help leapfrog that experience gap. Mike says, I finally caught the live. Congrats, Mike. Good to have you here. That's awesome that you finally caught it. Lewis says, thoughts on Aster and upcoming L1. So Aster, I've seen a lot of talk about it. I think that Aster potentially could do well now. Everyone dogged it for a while, including myself, because the chart's been down only. But I think now we're finally starting to form a little cup pattern, and we could see some attention return, especially with the BNB Eco. If BNB can get above $900 again, there's going to be a lot of hype with that. I saw Broccoli was pumping. I saw Aster was pumping. Cake was pumping a little bit, right? And so that's what I'm talking about with beta plays. When you have the main plays, such as BNB, start to take off, then what are some big plays on that chain that usually catch a tailwind afterwards? Aster, I think, is going to be one that could gain some attention again. Mike says, thoughts on rainbow fish? No thoughts on rainbow fish. Yeah, I have not heard of that meme. I've heard of a few others like Dewey. I've heard of the Nick Shirley one. I've heard of White Whale, Flying Ketamine Horse, 6-7, and then a few others. But yeah, I need to check rainbow fish. Priscilla says, what do you think about Halliburton? So Halliburton, as far as the trucking company, Halliburton, or is that more geared towards oil? Because for Halliburton, I guess I'm fairly neutral on it. It's a good company. What's going on, Wealth Management Brand? Good to see you here. Tenistic Production, what do you think the market held so well, even with the Venezuela situation? So that's a good question. So why do I think the market held so well, even with the Venezuela situation? So that's something I mentioned earlier on, where my first inclination that Bitcoin is probably going higher is seeing its resilience whenever the U.S. bombed Venezuela. And that's the first thing you have to look for. You don't have to look for how the market is doing, but how it reacts to news. Okay, so when you have the market absorbing that news fairly well and absorbing the supply from most of the sells, then that is an indication that now the narrative, as we're talking about narratives here, the narrative shifted from Bitcoin being a risky asset to Bitcoin being a safe haven. I mean, literally the narrative has shifted. I don't want to say overnight, but basically from last year to this year. We saw that narrative shift, and now we're seeing people invest in Bitcoin as a safe haven asset, truly as digital gold. Because gold has reached all-time highs already, silver reached all-time highs, and now we're seeing the rotation historically like it happens from those precious metals to Bitcoin and crypto. And so I think that's what happened. I think that at the end of the year, there's a lot of uncertainty with profit taking and tax loss harvesting. Now we're starting a new year, and now we're starting to see this actual use case of Bitcoin as a safe haven asset come to fruition. And so that's where the shift happened. And I think it was just based off rotations, based off narratives, because we have the stock market, precious metals reach all-time highs, and crypto is lagging. Now it's shifting. Now crypto is becoming the outperformer. Chris, bought a bag of ETH at 2,500. Not so sure what to do with it. Any advice? First of all, great buy, Chris. Congrats on that. So there is some resistance near 3,350 on ETH and major resistance near 35 to 3,600. And so if I were you, I'd probably take a little bit of profits now, and then I would take the rest of the profits near 35 to 3,600. That'd be my bet. No problem, Jovian. Obot Crip says, I love you, CryptoData. Miss your stream. Hey, appreciate you, Obot. Love you too. Awesome. Chud Jack, what's going on? Good to see you here. A lot of good people in here, guys. Trolls says, talking about Asterisk is the origin of Aster. We'll send together with the entire Binance Aster narrative. Very interesting. Haven't heard of that token before, but we'll do some research on it. But if anyone has any other questions, let me know. But again, guys, the big thing with this stream is that 2026 is going to be very exciting. I'm very bullish for Q1. I think we have an echo bubble. Echo bubble is basically a rally that was bigger than the last rally we had. Now, does that mean we're going to have pullbacks? Yes, it still means we're going to have pullbacks, right? Because at the end of the day, you have to be willing to look at both sides and consider both things. I know some smart traders who are going to short at 98K, which coincides with the 50-week EMA, where they're looking for potentially 70K or lower. So everyone here has to be ready for that possibility that we could reject from 98K and go all the way to 70K. That's a real possibility. That's still very, very possible. Now, is that going to happen? Well, I don't have a crystal ball, and I'm going to play it level by level, right? You're going to play it support level to support level, and then as we get to resistance, does it reject there? Do we close above and use it as support and then continue higher, right? Do we make higher lows? Do we form that bullish structure? And so you have to be able to be flexible in this market. And that's the same thing goes with being an up-only bull at times, just like what we've had the past few days. It's been up only. Any dip has been very short-lived. And so now the question becomes, well, we're kind of buying dips until we aren't, until those support levels no longer hold. And so that's kind of how you have to approach the market. It's not black and white, like, okay, now we're long only, now we're short only. There's still the chop in between and that uncertainty in between, but you can help alleviate that by looking at the technicals, looking at the narratives, seeing where we're at right now. How's the liquidity? How are ETF flows? How's the fear and greed index? And then it can help you develop a proper thesis of, well, the advantages for longs right now or the advantages for shorts. It doesn't mean you don't do the opposite. It just means that the majority of your trades are focused on the overarching narrative of, okay, more inflows, fear and greed index is rising, more attention on the market, retails are turning, memes are pumping. Okay, let's focus more on longs here, right? So you need to be able to have that flexibility in the market. Priscilla says, you think silver is going to 100 since China's stopping the silver exportation? Great question there. So China was doing a lot of things with silver whenever it was pumping. And I know that there was a huge drop, especially after China announced that. Do I think it's going to $100? Hard to say right now, honestly. Hard to say right now. I think that precious metals may cool off a little bit. I think that crypto is probably going to take the main stage, center stage for now. But again, depending if there's any black swans happening, then that could change. But in the meantime, right now, the market's pumping, attention's returning, inflows are becoming more prevalent. And so now it's just, okay, now we're being patient and waiting to see what happens. So yeah, I would say it's possible, but maybe for now, precious metals are going to take a back seat. Lewis says, great. Appreciate it. Longed Asters at 68 cents. Took a chance. Awesome. Congrats on that, Lewis. Good to see you're making some good money on there. Maximilian, yo, it seems like one can make the best trades. Just wait for a huge dump like this one and then long it instead of constantly trading lower time frame. Exactly. Yeah. So there's a few things with alpha that I want to mention to you guys. One, long invasions. What does that mean? It means when there's an invasion of another country, that's the most bearish time you can be, but also that's when everyone is the most scared, and that's when you long. Buy when others are fearful, sell when they're greedy, as Warren Buffett says. And so absolutely, Maximilian, you've nailed it on the head. And again, I'm not saying leverage trade it, but I'm saying you could buy spot and DCA down. That's historically the best time to do so. So absolutely, great point there. Tonistic production, do you see Bitcoin reaching all-time high in Q1? I don't see it reaching all-time high in Q1. I see it reaching potentially 98 to 100K in Q1. Or I see it reaching 98 to 100K in January. Q1, maybe 120K, 125K, yeah. I could see that in Q1. But again, it would be... we have to play it level by level here. I am bullish Q1, but at the same time, let's see how the market reacts once we get to 98 to 100K. That's going to tell us a lot about where it wants to go afterwards. Soji. Actually, wait, no. Bayo edits. ACD, thanks for the stream. Where would you look for a BTC long? Probably a resistance turning support. Yeah, exactly, Bayo edits. So conservatively, around 88K. That's going to be where the CME gap is at. That would be a conservative area to look for long. Now, aggressively, I would say around 90K. 90 to 92K would probably be the good area to long, but 90K is probably better to wait for. So if we can, because 90K has always been a big area of contention, and now we've closed above that, and it should be support now. Soji, what are some safe but profitable plays for someone with little capital, lost quite a lot in the past few months, and left with little? So Soji, you're not alone. Most of the people I knew had their accounts wiped out from October to December. I mean, it was a tough time for everyone, even myself. So if you're asking what is safe but profitable plays, I mean, probably, and now again, safe is kind of very subjective here. So Lighter started doing buybacks on their token. So Lighter is a competitor to Hyperliquid, and they're doing very, very well. And so I think Lighter, it's a little riskier, right? But I think Lighter may not do too bad in the future. I think there's still a chance it can reach $10 plus. But Lighter is one. And then potentially, if you want to look at Zcash or Monero to get that privacy narrative in there, a little exposure to that. And then obviously your main ones, right? Your BTC, Ethereum, Solanas. I mean, that's probably the easiest. But yeah, if you want to get a little more risky, Lighter and Zcash or Monero. And then a little bit safer, probably Ethereum or Solana. Probably those. But yeah, other than that, I mean, you're still going to have a lot of returns with other tokens. But it's just, I'm trying to think of ones that have staying power as far as probably Zcash is probably going to be the better one overall. I know there's going to be a lot of attention on that, probably the middle of the year. And so, yeah, Zcash Lighter could be your little, say, silver bullet plays, and then the safer ones, Ethereum, Solana. Luke says, Yo, CD, how you been? Rate cut odds have dropped. What are your thoughts? Hey, what's up, Luke? Yeah, so, yeah, we're not going to have a rate cut in January, but the biggest thing I'm watching is what the Fed's outlook. So January 28th, I think we're at like 90, 91% right now of no change. January 28th is the FOMC meeting, so depending what the Fed says, if they say they're going to cut rates in March potentially, or if they say they're not going to cut rates at all, we could see a drop then. So that's going to be a lot of volatility. If they say they're going to raise rates potentially, then, oh yeah, expect a huge drop in the market. Because Jerome Powell even said himself last year that there's no discussion of a rate hike. So as long as they're not going to do that, we're going to be fine. But just watch what the Fed says. And if they're going to start quantitative easing or anything of that sort. Priscilla says, XRP bullish year overall. I think XRP could surprise people, yeah. I think it's been held down long enough, and I think potentially we could see it even higher here. Maximilian says, your streams are peak. This is university. I appreciate you, Maximilian. I try to give you guys quality streams. Just because they're free doesn't mean they have to be bad, right? You can still provide value with free streams, and that's what I aim to do. Mirza, LOCD, sending much love. Hey, what's up, Mirza? Good to see you here. A lot of good people in here that I recognize. Awesome, guys. Robinhood, I'm holding my ETH short. Do you think I should close? Just share your opinion. Ooh, so ETH short right now. That's the big question because now, I mean, Bitcoin closed the 4 hour at 94.2K. I mean, literally it's just been up only right now. So yeah, here's the thing, guys, is when you have tokens like this just continuing to grind higher, I mean, that is a clear signal that the market wants higher, right? So for Ethereum, you have an Ethereum short, probably best to close that. I mean, just looking at it right now, it's at 32.40. I mean, 32.70 is going to be a big resistance point. And so that would be the big level to watch if it does not, if it does break above that. So just keep that in mind. I would just say be careful. But yeah, 32.70, if it closes above that on the 4 hour, I'd get out. Mirza, historically, every single time after BTC cycle peak, Bitcoin crashes and then always pumps up the 50 EMA on the daily, which is around 106K, and then has a bad crash in the market bear territory. Exactly. That's definitely a possibility, right? There you go. Mirza, expecting that to happen right now, but 100K seems like a tough resistance level as well. Yeah, 100K also coincides with the 50 EMA on the weekly, so we're at 98 to 100K, so that's a big level to watch. Tenistic Productions, do you hold Zcash or trade in certain levels? I don't hold Zcash right now, but it is a good token to watch. Absolutely. Mirza says 200 MA, my bad. Hey, no problem, Mirza. Yeah, the 200 MA is a big one that people watch for. So I know that everyone's expecting Bitcoin to reject off the 50 weekly EMA and go down to the 200 moving average, which is one thing to watch. So that's what I would say, is just be patient on that. And then Bayo Edit says, BTC RSI 1 week wants to cross to upside. So very, very interesting. Yeah, the BTC 1 week is very bullish, guys. And check my X post. I posted that the market, I'm seeing a ton of bullish signals on here. So yeah, check that as well. Everything is starting to come and come to fruition. So Tenistic Production says, you still think memes are going to keep pumping if Bitcoin struggles at 98 to 100K? No, usually Bitcoin is the main player in town. If it drops, then usually memes follow it. Bitcoin is the whole risk on signal, and really memes are the risk on signal as well, but usually they correlate to each other. So that's something I would definitely watch. But with that said, guys, if you guys have not liked this stream, I'd appreciate a like. Always appreciated. It looks like there's no other questions here. So again, I hope this streams help you guys out. And that was the biggest thing I wanted to get away is 2026 is going to be a big year. And there's going to be a lot of narratives. There's going to be a lot of opportunities. So you guys need to take advantage of those as much as possible. And please, please, please make sure you're taking profits along the way. Make sure you're hedging your positions appropriately and managing your risk and not marrying your bags and not betting the farm on one token or one trade. You need to make sure that you play the long game in trading, not the short game, because it's not about making that 100x. It's about making those 10 to 20% consistently over time, because consistency does compound. So the next stream is going to be next Sunday at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. It's going to be the weekly market overview. So I should say this Sunday at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. And so be on the lookout for that. And then I'll have another stream Monday. So it's Sundays and Mondays around 1 p.m. Central Standard Time, and maybe plus or minus. So it's going to be between 1 to 1:30 Central Standard Time, Sundays and Mondays. So Sundays are always weekly market overviews, and Mondays are always like a lesson, kind of like this. Talk about narratives, talk about leverage trading, talk about macro views, different things in the market. So definitely make sure you stay tuned for that. Also, follow me on X if you guys aren't, at the CryptoData. Like I said, I always post a lot of good content for you guys. Try to keep you updated with the market. So thank you guys so much. Appreciate you guys. Love you, and have a great rest of the week. Talk soon.